Welcome to Trigger the Truth with attorney Jason Guida, where we unravel the ins and outs of Massachusetts firearms law.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Trigger the Truth with attorney Jason Guida. I'm Matt Skye. Jason is the leading expert on Massachusetts firearms law. Jason, thanks for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me, Matt.
So we got some news. Massachusetts just passed a new gun bill. How significant is this legislation?
Yeah, it is a busy and stressful time for gun owners in Massachusetts right now. This piece of legislation has been worked on by the state House and the state Senate over the past 2 years, but it's been stuck in a conference committee for a couple of months, quite a few months, where it was kind of secretly worked out, where no one really knew what was in it. This past Wednesday, the language was released, and we're looking at 112 pages of rewrites to our gun laws. And a lot of this legislation, a lot of this law is going to criminalize what has been previously thought of as legal conduct. It's going to significantly damage firearms dealers and their ability to do their job and sell firearms and make a living. It's created quite a mess for everyone involved, law enforcement, gun owners, trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen. The bill's on the governor's desk as we're meeting right now. We expect it to be signed in the next couple of days. And depending on whether or not there is an emergency preamble, it may go in effect right away if it is signed.
So maybe let's get into some of the specifics. What are the main changes to the assault weapons ban that we're going to see?
Oh, yeah. So the assault weapons ban, that's one of the huge pieces. So the legislation is codifying a 2016 Attorney General's opinion here in Massachusetts that says that copies and duplicates of weapons that were previously in the law, AR-15 type weapons, AK type weapons, are unlawful to possess. And what it's saying is if the weapon was not bought, owned, and registered prior to July 20th, 2016, it is illegal to own. And there are many people who purchase things after July 20th of 2016, believing either that the AG's enforcement notice didn't have the force of law, which, there's a good argument behind that, or believing that it wasn't going to be enforced or it was just going to be ignored. And for many years, it was ignored. Those people now are, in their gun safe may have something that if they're caught with it could turn them into a convicted felon. They are also, and this is another big piece, they are redefining some of the features that make a semi-automatic rifle a assault weapon. One of those features now is the presence of a barrel shroud, which is basically almost like an extra handle on the end that covers the barrel that keeps your hand from being burned. It's pretty much on every semi-automatic rifle that's out there. And by adding that barrel shroud feature, essentially it's going to ban the sale of most, if not all, semi-automatic rifles in Massachusetts. We're going to be back to, bolt-action rifles, lever-action rifles now.
So you mentioned this may impact previous gun owners. What happens if they find themselves in a position where their gun is now illegal?
Right. So this is a tough situation for many of those guys. I'm advising my clients first, maybe contact the firearms dealer that sold it to you and see if you can get a refund, see if they'll take it back. A lot of firearms dealers, if they're also licensed manufacturers under federal law, they're going to be able to sell those out of state. So some of these dealers are taking them in on consignment right now, and they'll ship them out of state. You're probably going to lose money. I mean, that's the honest truth, is that, you're probably going to be out, hundreds of dollars on these items that you bought thinking that they were legal.
So are there any in particular problematic areas of this bill?
Yeah, I mean, besides that piece, there's a couple of other things that are in there that are really jumping out at us. One of the big pieces is our red flag law and the expansion of our red flag law. For those who don't know what red flag is, it's essentially a petition that's filed in court where somebody says that you're a danger and that you shouldn't be able to have possession of a weapon. This law is increasing or adding people that can actually red flag you, and that includes your therapist, your marriage counselor, or your substance abuse counselor. So, you're having a hard time, maybe a family member passed away, maybe your marriage is falling apart, maybe you're drinking, you find yourself drinking too much and you want to get help for that. Those people now that you're talking to, that you're trusting, are now, able to and may feel obligated to report you to the court if you are feeling down and you're feeling that, that you might want to harm yourself. They will report you to the court and your gun rights can be taken away here in Massachusetts. Another provision of the law, which is we're really trying to understand it. We're looking at 112 pages here. There seems to be language in it that is adopting many of the rules that we have for handguns on what is called the approved weapons roster. It appears that rifles and shotguns are going to fall under that roster. That roster governs what gun dealers can sell. Right now, there are no rifles and shotguns on that roster, and it seems like when this law is signed, or at least if there's no emergency preamble within 90 days, gun dealers are not going to be able to sell any rifles or shotguns until that roster is updated. That's significant and probably unconstitutional.
So obviously, whenever laws like this change, there tend to be legal challenges. What do you see coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question that there are going to be a number of significant challenges. We are actually, and I say we, attorneys that practice in this field, along with interest groups such as the Gun Owners Action League here in Massachusetts, the Second Amendment Foundation, actually have a meeting this evening later on today after we're done with this conversation to talk about what we expect is going to happen. I do know that the Gun Owners Action League has had a national law firm that has worked with the New York law on retainer. We're going to be talking about splitting up parts of this bill possibly to seek what's called injunctive relief, which would prevent parts of it from going into effect right away. There are also conversations out there about a voter referendum. There is a way in Massachusetts to obtain signatures in the case of a bill that signed 15,000 signatures in 90 days. If you're able to do that and file that with the Secretary of State's office, you can actually prevent the bill from going into effect and actually put it on the ballot for the people of Massachusetts to vote as to whether it should become law or not. So there's conversations going on about that as well. One of the big things, and again, we're kind of at the early stage. This bill has just come out and we're really kind of picking it apart. One of the big things is, what does it actually do and where does it conflict with other laws? I'll give you an example. One of the provisions in the law says that common carriers like UPS and FedEx, when they are transporting guns into Massachusetts, they have to have all of those guns locked and secured, similar to a Massachusetts license holder. That's going to be a big problem for gun dealers getting shipments to their shops, because a lot of those UPS trucks, they don't have, the front door is open to the cab and they can get in that way and get in the back. Those things aren't locked. UPS and FedEx may say, you know what, we're not going to ship to Massachusetts anymore. That's going to be a big problem. That's going to initiate hopefully litigation and injunction. But on top of that, that provision likely conflicts with federal law. Federal law governs interstate transport of things, and there are laws governing how weapons can be transported across state lines. So, as we're looking at the bill, we're looking at, okay, does it conflict with federal law? Does it conflict with state law and prior decisions? And obviously, does it conflict with our decisions that are interpreting our Second Amendment, the Bruin decision, the recent Rahimi decision? Those are all things that we need to analyze. And again, it's only been a couple of days and lawyers are just starting to get their head around what we're dealing with here.
Can you detail for us a little more legal precedent for Bill 4885, perhaps in other states or anything that might have been similar and what people can expect moving ahead?
Yeah, so this bill really, I think, takes a lot of its initiative from what New York recently did and New Jersey. It did, it actually scaled back some of what they call the prohibited places language. So a lot of what New York did was try to prohibit the carrying of firearms in public places everywhere. And most of the litigation that we've seen from that has said, no, that's unconstitutional. The whole purpose of the Second Amendment is so that you can protect yourself, even in public. This bill scales that back and just really focuses on government buildings, schools, things like that. With regard to what can be sold and what can't be sold, California has similar type laws out there. Those have been challenged and they're working their way through the federal court system. We actually have a challenge right now that's working its way through the federal court system on our list of guns that can or cannot be sold by firearms dealers. This is going to kind of upset that apple cart, if you will, because now, and I've been consulting on that case, now we have to look at this new law and say, okay, does that make our current litigation, do we have to amend it? Is it moot? Again, it's going to take some time to absorb it and really get a real good litigation plan in place.
So you mentioned this earlier. This is all kind of new at this point. What is the status of the bill? When is it expected to go into effect?
Excellent. Yeah, so it is on the governor's desk. What I have heard through, people that I, still speak to, I worked in the State House many years ago, is that the governor's office is soliciting certain interest groups, such as the chiefs of police, some other interest groups, to see if there's any amendments that are needed. But I'm also hearing from other sources that even if there are amendments, they're not going to do it at this time, that they're really just holding it for the right news cycle to have a signing ceremony and announce the bill and congratulate themselves on this. So we're expecting it is going to be signed. Whether it has an emergency preamble or not, we don't know. The emergency preamble means if the governor signs it, when she signs it, it goes into law immediately. If there's no emergency preamble, there's at least a 90-day kind of grace period for this to be implemented. There are other provisions of the law, such as there's a live fire provision that you have to take a live fire course and take a written test before you're able to apply for a license. It seems like that has other dates in which that part's going to go into effect because regulations need to be created first. There's a registration requirement. It looks like that's going to take some time, and there seems to be language in the bill that allows time to create that registration system. But in the meantime, we're all kind of waiting for that signature, waiting to know, is there going to be an emergency preamble or not?
So if you can just break down for us the most significant implications for owners and for sellers at this point.
Yeah, you bet. So obviously, if you have a copy or duplicate that was purchased after July 20th, 2016, that's something that you're going to need to take care of. After this bill goes into effect, that could be, problematic, from a criminal standpoint. The registration requirement, everyone who has brought in guns here in Massachusetts, if you've built firearms, all of those are now going to have to be registered. That was not the law before. You only had to register a transfer if you sold a gun. Now, if you own it, it needs to be registered. If you have what they call pre-banned large capacity magazines, if you had one prior to September 13th, 1994, or at least manufactured before that date, you're not going to be able to carry that magazine around anymore. You can have it. You'll never be able to transfer it, but you can't carry it. You can lock it in a case and bring it to a gun shop. Gun dealers, certainly advising gun dealers to purchase and buy as much inventory as they can, legal inventory, because there's a cutoff date of August 1st. And if they have inventory that's legal on August 1st, they're going to be allowed to sell it. Although we're still trying to figure out how, given that whole approved weapons roster issue. And again, I'm telling people to be mindful of that whole mental health component. That's going to be, kind of wait and see to see what kind of impact that has on people's rights here in Massachusetts.
So we've covered a lot of ground. Jason, are there any major takeaways for listeners and viewers today?
Yeah, the major takeaway here is to know what's in your gun safe, number one. Ask questions and get help. Use the resources that are out there. There's a lot of good resources. The Gun Owners Action League is a good resource. If you do want to hire counsel, we're taking calls and setting up phone conferences. Don't rely on kind of the internet blogs and the people who are saying things that aren't lawyers, don't know what they're talking about. Those people may get you in trouble, and they may have already. So get your information from good sources. Eventually, the government's probably going to put out an explanation of what this bill is and how it's going to work. But in the meantime, know what's in your safe. If there's something that you want that's still legal to buy, you should go and get that now before August 1st. And gun dealers, many gun dealers I'm talking to are staying open later hours, may even be open 24 hours leading up to August 1st.
And just one last question. What types of cases do you anticipate seeing in your office as this bill progresses?
Yeah, of course, we definitely think there's going to be an uptick in red flag petitions. I do know a lot of my clients do go through issues, marriage counseling, therapy, and there are a lot of people in that field who play kind of the better safe than sorry game. So we think there's going to be an uptick in those. And certainly there's a lot of people over the last 8 years or so that bought AR type lowers thinking that they were legal to buy, believing that because people told them it was okay. Those people are going to end up, hopefully they take care of it. But if they keep those things and they have a problem, they're going to end up getting charged with an assault weapon ban violation. That's a serious felony, and that can be, life-changing, to be honest with you. We're also probably going to see registration issues. There's a lot of people that brought guns here when they moved to Massachusetts over the last 30, 40 years and didn't realize that, aren't going to realize that the law is changing and those things need to be registered. So I suspect as time goes by, people are going to be found to have, unregistered weapons, and we're going to have to deal with that as well. And that's what we're expecting right now. Again, most of the calls I'm taking right now is, how does this law impact me, whether you're a gun dealer or a gun owner in Massachusetts?
A lot of legal aspects to keep in mind. Everybody, this has been Trigger the Truth with Jason A. Guida. For information or to connect with Jason, visit lawguida.com. Jason, thanks for your time today.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.